if you look at the 6-step financial planning process, establish a relationship, gather information, analyze it, develop a plan, then implement that plan. The first 5 steps of the 6-step financial planning process, guys, and this is really, really important psychologically to understand, are a sales process. So in professionalizing what we're doing, in trying to look at a long-term relationship with a client, which is what a professional relationship is about, the first 5 steps are about the initial sale. Then we say review or monitor, and guess where we go? We go back to step 1. Now, review and monitor, we go back to step 1 because at the heart of it, what we've always done is we've looked for another sale at the review. That's the purpose of the review for a lot of sales businesses. So because this process was developed institutionally, there is still this huge emphasis on the financial plan to say, get the financial plan right, and then you've got the client, and then the commissions will follow. And that's why a lot of products still pay single commissions over 2 years. But if you look at this and start to ask some real questions, the first 5 steps is 1 month or 2 months. Step 6 is 30 years. Why on earth don't we have a description of what's supposed to be happening within step 6? That's what matters. That's where the relationship actually is. That's where my business brand is going to get built. In 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I'm promoting companies' brands. In step 6, that's where my work starts to come in. And we've made a big mistake, I think, in looking at this. And even if you make it fancy, even if you take a more detailed explanation of what your business does, we still find over and over again, it's this 5 steps about how you get brought on board, how you become a client. Because, by the way, this is important. Before step 5, you're not even a client. You only become a client at step 5. And then we can't tell you what happens once you become a client. That's something we've really got to think about. So once you become a client of my business, I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can't tell you what you're going to receive. I just use this amorphous word, which is we will review you, which means different things to different people. To some people, a review means I call you on your birthday and say happy birthday. There we go. We've done our review. The law says you need to contact each client once a year. So if you send an email with a newsletter, you've contacted the client. So now have you done the review? For other people, they'll say, no, I need to sit down with people for 4 hours and go through a long process for them. I've got a different definition of what a review is. For most of us, when you start to look at how do we deal with existing clients, there's too many of them to review every year. So we can't do a review every year because we're still stuck on the first 5 steps. We've got this idea that we have to keep bringing new business and new people into the business over and over and over again for the business to grow. Because that's the reality for insurance companies, but it's been passed across to us. And we need to start to re-look at some of those things and say, are those realities for them? So what do you do? I mean, how do you explain your business to somebody if you don't have a description of what's going to happen? Well, let's start with what becoming a client means. Let's move away from the 6-step planning process. And instead, let's take a different point of view. Let's take a view as a services company. And let's say, you know what? I want you to become my client. But in order to gain your trust, in order for you to know what you're going to be receiving from me, I need to give you a tender. So I'm going to have to tender for your business. And the document that we use for that tender in our industry is called a financial plan. So myself, for example, I run a consulting business, I run a service business. I hope it's professional. But I'm doing the same thing that you guys are doing. I just do it business to business. So I go to groups and I say, this is what I think my value is. And if they're interested, they will then say, okay, put together a tender. And if they're happy with what's in the tender and what I'm charging, we then implement. That's when the work begins. But they do not pay me to give them a tender. That wouldn't make any sense. I can't go in and say, here's a description of what I want to do for you. Now pay me for that. I have to do the work that's in the tender. So if you look at a financial plan, I want you to start to look at it as a process of saying it's actually an explanation of what I want to do for you. My business can manage your financial life for the rest of your life. This document is our first map about what it is that we can do for you. Is that something that you're interested in? Now, if you start to look at it in those terms, you can look at your business and you can start to say, all right, if you want to engage with me, we will send you before the appointment a package. And then within that package will be a confidentiality agreement, a description of our process, and a checklist to prepare you for that first meeting. Now, why would we give you a confidentiality agreement? Because I am going to need you to ask you very difficult personal questions about your financial circumstances, in some case, your medical and personal life. in order to know you as a person, in order to give you the best advice. And I appreciate financial advisors are not considered the same way that lawyers or priests or doctors are when it comes to confidentiality. So I am going to emphasize that to you. I am going to make that very clear to you. When I come and see you and we sit together, either virtually or in reality, I'm going to give you another copy of that agreement signed by myself. And I'm going to ask you to sign that agreement as well. Now, that document is legally strong enough. If I break that confidentiality, if I step outside the bounds of business, if I discuss any of your personal information with anyone that I'm not meant to, you can take that to a court of law and you can have me charged. You can go to a police station with it. And I want you that confident. I want you that strong in your knowledge about what I'll do with this information, because if we're not able to have that open conversation, I can't give you the correct advice, and the consequences of that are devastating. Once you understand that confidentiality, I'm then going to go through a process of trying to get to know you. I'm going to ask you quite a lot of questions about your life. I'm going to want to see how money moves into your life and moves out of your life. And the reality is, I lie to myself about money. You lie to yourself about money. Most of us have a very poor grip of what money's really doing in our lives. So verbal information isn't necessarily that helpful. It's an opinion. Let's deal with facts. I want to see certain things like your bank statements over the period of a year or 6 months, because then I can start to understand what's really happening with money. I can see your spending habits. I can see what you're doing personally, whether you've got certain things where we can reduce certain expenses for you. I can see where you're paying into products that you might have dealt with in the past. And all of that's going to give me a much better context about how money's moving in your life. But beyond that, I want to know who you are. I want to know what it is that you're trying to achieve. And I want to be realistic with you. We'll provide and manage all the administrative and legal documentation necessary to best understand you, whilst ensuring that happens. Once we've got that picture of you complete, then we're going to go back to the office and we're going to use technology to find out where you are financially at the moment, things you mightn't have known about or that you've forgotten about. One of our senior advisors is going to pull together all of that information about yourself, and we're going to say, listen, in the immediate term, here are things that we think need to happen. In the medium term, here are things that need to happen. In the longer term, here are things that need to happen. We want that long-term relationship with you. We want to work with you over a number of years to get you to the best destination that we can. In order to do that, here is a service agreement stating exactly what you can expect from our business over the course of the next 5, 10, 15 years. We will contract with you about what that service is and when you can expect to receive it from us. We will come back to you. We will present that plan so you fully understand it. We will explain our service agreement so that you know exactly what you can expect from us. And only at that stage, when we have invested 20 hours of our time and we have shown you exactly what you can expect from us, exactly what we're going to do for you, will we ask you whether or not you want to become part of our financial family. We are willing to invest that time to make sure you make the right decision for you. We are willing to show you how we work and what we do so that you understand our business properly. Once you understand that, then you become our client. Then the process of implementation begins and that service contract is kicked off absolutely immediately. Now, a couple of questions for you. Have I mentioned a product? Have I mentioned a commercial company? What I want you to take away from this, the reality is, for most of you listening to me today, apart from the ongoing service agreement, you're probably doing most of this already. You are probably doing most of this already, but you don't tell anyone. We take our business, we do this work, we structure it, we get all of this knowledge and we hide it behind a product because we sell insurance, and I want to talk about this company. So the client can't see the effort and the time that you're putting in. They don't know about it. They know you come and see them for an hour and then you come back. You may as well have gone back to the office and pressed the button and a generic plan just came pouring out. I don't know that that's not the case because you don't tell me. By changing a couple of points in your conversation, by teaching yourself that what you do has value, your conversation with your client fundamentally changes. When you start to understand that you are only tendering for that client's business in writing this financial plan, you will stop saying, you know what, our business is unfair because we write all of these plans and people don't implement them. They didn't implement them because they didn't buy into you and your business. You need to start to make it clear to them that this financial plan is not about the product. It's about your relationship with me, because that will determine your outcome. The product is useless if you don't know how to contract with it properly. And that's what we're expert in. We'll make sure the product does for you what it's supposed to do. If you take this down the road to somebody else, they're probably not going to be able to do that because they haven't thought about it and they don't understand how important that reality is to make their clients work. We are a professional business. You are at the center of our decision making, and we are in the business of getting you a claim, not in the business of selling you a product. The product is irrelevant if you can't contract with it properly. If someone has relationships with 10 insurance companies, and that's what the independence is, and they can't contract properly with any of those companies, how does that independence help the client? It doesn't help the client. So we need to build businesses that are built around helping the client. And most of you are already doing these things, but you're not letting the client know. And the client is defaulting to thinking you're an agent. It's not the client's fault. We need to start explaining our value and our process much more. We need to start valuing it ourselves, because then your purpose will change. Then your direction will change. The way you get out of bed in the morning will change. The way you tell people what you do will change. And at the beginning of this process, guys, it's really just a simple thing that we're building. I want to give you a good understanding of what I do. That's my tender. I want to make myself accountable to that. So I'm going to make a promise in writing about what you can expect to receive from my business. That makes me accountable. If I give you a contract and I deliver on that contract, and I give you a contract and I deliver on that contract, and I give you a contract and I deliver on that contract, and I give you a contract and I deliver on that contract, you are going to build trust. When people trust you, you will never be out of business. You will never have to market. You will never have to do anything else. But we always look for shortcuts. Stephen Covey wrote a book about the speed of trust. If you do this multiplied by that and then this other thing, people will trust you faster. The reality is, if you want trust, you have to make a promise and deliver on it over and over and over and over again. And you need a system to make sure those promises are being delivered for you. But the way you will feel about yourself, the way you will feel about your business and your relationships with your clients will fundamentally change. So by taking this approach, and again, I just want to emphasize, I haven't changed what you do. I'm just changing how you talk about it. That's all. I'm just trying to say to you, what you do now has far, far more value than you're letting yourself know, let alone your clients. So if you start to get a grip on that, and if you start to realize how important the job that I'm doing actually is, then everything shifts. The client starts to realize the product is absolutely secondary. What I need is you, because the products are going to change over my life. They're going to differ, and my circumstances will change, and different things are going to happen. So the products will come and go. But the constant I choose to work with is you as an advice firm to deliver on that for me. Can you view on what an advice business's value is, strengthen or weaken your relationships? If you don't see value in yourself as a business, your client won't see it either. If you're not able to articulate it and say what your value is, you haven't thought about it and it's not internalized within you. So that means you won't be able to see it. Can this change your perception of the market? Can this change their perception about you and what it is that you're doing? If you spoke about yourself this way, would that change the way you feel about yourself, and would that change the way that your clients feel about you as well?